Good Wednesday morning, folks. Oh, we'll let some of the tardy ones that get in here first. I think everybody's in. Oh, we got some connecting to audio. They must be on Mac systems. That always takes a little bit of time. But anyway, good Wednesday morning. Dark and gloomy, but that's, the fall. It's the fall now. I really enjoyed over the summertime being able to welcome you to a nice sunny Wednesday, but we're going to be into cooler, more moderate temperatures, probably a little bit of rain, and eventually we know what the rain will lead to. But we're going to be here on Wednesdays chatting it up and having some fun and not worrying about what the weather is. Today is really special for me. Having a good friend of mine on, a good friend of the chamber on. We've worked together for many, many years on various amounts of projects. And actually what a lot of people don't know is, and we always say, Cambridge is the center of the universe. There's lots of evidence for that. The United Nations says Canada is the best, one of the best countries in the world to live in for opportunity and quality of life. And of course, Canada says Ontario is the economic engine to the country. And Ontario says the Southwestern Ontario is the heart of the economic engine of the province of Ontario. And I always say, then if you just put your hand like that on your wrist, you feel the beat of the heart of the economic engine of the best country in the world. So there's evidence that this is the center of the universe. And what a lot of people don't know is actually Alex Mustakas, our guest this morning, comes from, of course, Greece, immigrated with his family when he was 6 years old. But where did he move to? Cambridge, downtown Galt, where he actually, for his father, worked in the old bus terminal on Ainsley Street coffee shop. That's what his dad had. And Alex was a coffee server at a very young age. So if you ever want to have a coffee with him, make sure that he serves it so that you can see his skills in performing that. But let me tell you a little bit about Alex. A lot of people would say, because Alex started Drayton Entertainment way, way, way back when, and some of you have probably visited the Drayton Theater. He had this dream and this idea in mind because he was absolutely in love with performing arts and the theater and all of the things that it could bring to people, and happiness and joy and comfort and entertainment, of course. And he started this really, and most people would say, what were you thinking? But obviously we know now, after many years of Drayton Entertainment entertaining tens of thousands of people every year, he was thinking of a big, bold organization that was going to do a number of things in our communities and in Southwestern Ontario for the people that live here. And I think the other thing is I think, and we're going to talk a little bit about that, but you're going to find out what type of an organization this is. Theater companies and live production theater is all around the world. And I can tell you there are, I think there's none of them. There might be a few of them that operate like Drayton Entertainment was, but they're very few and far between, if at all. And you're going to learn a little bit more about that. But Alex Mustakas is also has an honorary doctorate. And I'll tell you, he has not only directed hundreds of performances and shows that have happened, not just in Drayton Entertainment theaters, but other theaters all over the place. In fact, my old stomping grounds of Port Dover, he's actually done some in the Lighthouse Theater down there, which is a great venue to watch a show as well. But he was Dr. Hook in Peter Pan. And I think, Alex, actually that was my favorite version of you. And I remember asking Jackie, after your wife, and saying, wow, like Alex did an incredible job of acting. as Doctor or as Captain Hook, and she said, "Oh no, 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 no. That is really Alex. He actually acts through the day when he's the nice guy around the office and at home." So, but he did a tremendous job, and I've always had a ton of fun watching Alex perform, watching him direct in some incredibly marvelous shows. And in fact, he was also given an honorary doctorate by Wilfrid Laurier, I believe. And so he is actually Dr. Alex Mustakas. And I quite frankly think if the hospitals in the area knew that he's actually Dr. Alex Mustakas, they might have been able to tap into him, because if he can act out Dr. or Captain Hook like he did, he could certainly act out Dr. Hook in our health institutions. And that's where we've really needed some help these days. But Alex, it's a pleasure to have you. And I sorry it took so long to get you on here, because I think, first of all, your story is incredible and important. And of course, given the times we've had in the last 18 months, also the story of Drayton Entertainment and its survival through the pandemic is something that's very important and people should understand as well. So welcome, Alex.
Thank you, Greg. Thanks for having me on. I do remember those early days here in Galt at the bus terminal coffee shop. And those were days where the price of coffee, a cup of coffee, was 10 cents, if you can believe that. Fast forward to Starbucks today, right? So how things have changed. But this was our home when we moved to Canada from, it was actually the Greek side of Cyprus, the island of Cyprus. And I remember it was an 11-day ship journey, and to bring us to Halifax, and from there landed in, took a train to Toronto, and then back to, and then to this area. It's very interesting, you know, whenever I'm having a bad day, I think of my mother and my father, who are both passed now, bringing 3 kids. We had one small crate of possessions, not knowing a lot of English and moving to this area. So if I'm having a bad day, I just think of that, and then I realize I'm not having a bad day.
Yeah.
So think about doing that today, right? So we're very fortunate. This is still the best country in the world, and I am proud to be here, and I'm very proud of what we've established with our theater company. And it's, as you said, it's very unique. We've always taken the approach, and we've created a model of sustainability, which is really difficult in the arts. Some of you who may have been involved in theater know that whether you have 10 performances or 100 performances, the pre-production costs are the same. You have to rehearse actors, you have to build costumes and sets and props, and market shows, etc. So this was the ability to spread the pre-production costs over multiple theaters. Did I ever think we would get to this point where we have 7 venues around the province? I don't think so. You know, I studied after my degree in business and economics at Laurier. I went into professional acting, then professional directing, and then I thought it would be a great way to maybe round out all my skills. And I went to England, to London, England, and I studied arts administration. And I received a master's in arts administration. And I remember my colleagues who were from all over the world said, "What do you want to do when you get back? Do you want to work for the Canadian Opera Company or the National Ballet as an administrator?" I said, I would love to find a small country playhouse somewhere where I can manage, where I can occasionally perform and direct, like the old Sir Henry Irving actor-manager days. And that's what happened with this little village of Drayton, 2 crossroads in the country, not easy to get to. And there's this beautiful opera house on the 2nd floor of the town hall. And in kind of the turn of the century, a lot of those town hall theaters were actually funded by the Carnegie Foundation. And historically, you'll see that it was a place for council meetings. It was a place for amateur theatrics and glee clubs and things like this. And it was also part of the vaudeville circuit of the time in the turn of the century. The Carnegie Foundation then stopped funding these theaters when we went from vaudeville to burlesque, because that was a little risque. But there were a number of these theaters around the province, and the success of this little village, and I still pay tribute to all the residents of that village who made this a reality. To this day, they're still involved. They're advocates of theater. They are at the front door almost every performance to welcome people to their community, to say thank you for coming. I don't know that you get that anywhere else. Maybe Walmart, but we mean it. So it's a great story, and it's based on the grassroots. I've always believed that great theater comes from the bottom up. And if you look at history, some of the greatest theater comes from struggle, right? And that's why I think we've always remembered that. Every decision I have ever made has been for the audience. As a result, good things have happened to our company and to me and to our staff and to our artists as well. But it is a creation of a model of sustainability where we amortize costs over multiple theaters. So, when we're here in Cambridge, our head office here in Cambridge, it's not just about this community, but we're partnering with all the other communities as well, because we're all kind of sharing resources. And the model is of great benefit, not only to the fiscal responsibility of our organization, but it's doubled and tripled work weeks for actors. We've gone from local sponsorship now to sometimes national sponsorship or provincial sponsorship. It's allowed our patrons these flexible subscription packages. So they will, they'll see 2 shows in Cambridge, 2 in Penetanguishene, 1 in Drayton, 2 in St. Jacobs, and so on. And, sometimes where the arts make a case of economics, we can prove it, because someone from here that will drive to Penetang will stay overnight. They will eat in restaurants. They may take in another attraction like St. Maria among the Hurons or Discovery Harbor. And like I said, eat in restaurants, put gas in their car. So there is that economic multiplier with it as well. So it's a very unique model. I'd like to say that I was the first ever to do it, but I don't think so. If you think of the old Pantages circuit in the early days, right? They had these multiple theaters, and it only happened because things became so successful in this little village of Drayton. At one point, when the village had 1,000 residents, we brought in 45 times the population to this little crossroads village, right? And so once it sold out, I think we made Canadian history by selling out our 3rd season of 36,000 seats at the time, sold out a month before we went into rehearsals for the first show. And that's when I started thinking, I didn't want to make this little village, and more theaters in this little village, but I thought, can we create this same thing somewhere else? And that's when Milo Shantz of St. Jacobs came to us and said, maybe we've got this little schoolhouse here. Would you be interested in maybe putting some theater in it, right? And it was a calculated risk. We knew that our patrons that were buying subscription may just buy one other ticket or one other show in St. Jacobs, and that exploded as well. Back in '97, I think we put a production of Forever Plaid in, and it played for 7 months, 8 shows a week it was a small cabaret space, about 110 seats, and it sold 110%, if you can believe that. So I knew we were onto something. So that's when I started thinking, can we replicate this somewhere else? And have the kind of economic benefits of doing it as well. And then we went to Penetang and then Grand Bend, built another theater in St. Jacobs. And then, of course, our latest venture is the Hamilton Family Theater here in Cambridge, which does very well. I think we entertain over 100,000 people in a season through our professional theater season, but also community rentals and community meetings and so on. It really has become the hub of our artistic programming and kind of a social aspect as well, because I truly believe that the residents of Cambridge are very proud of this theater that they can call their own. Prior to this, even dance studios had to go out of town to find a theater space to perform in. So I believe it's worked out really well. The promises we made from day one, saying that it's going to be an economic boost, were very evident. Right away, restaurants started filling up in the kind of downtown core, right? Because I truly believe what you see on stage is the icing on the cake. It's the entire experience, from the moment you call the box office to booking your dinner plans, to seeing the show, or what you do after the show as well, depending if whether it's a matinee or an evening. So it's done everything we wanted it to, but then the pandemic hit, and literally on March 12th, 2020, everything came crashing to a halt. We lost 100% of our revenue basically overnight. Everything stopped. We were headed to have a banner season because we were ahead by 20,000 seats from the year before. But as you know, we didn't get through to any of the opening nights of the first two shows. We were the first theater to actually shut down. The next day, everyone else started to do it as well, including Stratford and Shaw. And so it definitely has been a challenge. One of the things I was concerned about, because of our model of sustainability, we've never wanted to be a burden on our communities, a financial burden. So we actually have done this all ourselves. Through 80% of our revenue is ticket sales. The rest comes from membership contributions, creative fundraisers, corporate sponsorships, et cetera, et cetera. And like I said, everything dried up overnight. We've never been a recipient of any provincial or federal Arts Council funding, again, because we wanted to do this ourselves. And it's the first time in 32 years where it actually hurt us, because I knew at some point government would distribute money to arts and culture in provincially and federally as well. And they did, and we had sent notes prior to this happening saying some of us are going to get lost in the shuffle because we have not been receiving funding to begin with, operating funds to begin with. And that's exactly what happened. The government distributed the money. Who do they distribute it to? Well, let's give it to the Arts Council. The Arts Council then said, well, what are we going to do with it? Let's just spread it out through our client base of those who receive funding. So unfortunately, we were shut out on that. I remember, and it was quite a hardship. I remember appearing before the House of Commons Standing Committee on Arts and Culture months ago, and I tried to express not only this situation, but also to continue to support arts and culture and tourism in Canada, and of course in our province as well. And I was on for about 40 minutes. I also touched on the kind of mental health issue as well of our artists. It's like the musician that I spoke to recently said, this is all I've ever done in my life since I was a child, right? I've been a musician, and that's all gone. Or the actress who said, I've studied for this all my life and there's no work, right? And they had to realize that it's tough enough to make a living in the arts in Canada, but they also lost their secondary industries, right? Their catering jobs, their bar jobs, their teaching, and so on. So it was a double whammy. So we were very fortunate for the first time that artists in this country were supported through CERB and some of those, some of that funding. But I told them how serious it was about the mental health of our artists. And I actually quoted Charlie Chaplin, who once said, I like to walk in the rain so that no one can see my tears. And that's how artists were feeling and continue to feel. So it's been a little devastating that way as well. So not only economically, but the mental health of our industry. And we weren't the only ones. Obviously, arts and culture, tourism, the hospitality trade, we're all in the same boat. Any industry that kind of congregates people together has been suffering the same way. So that was, that it has been difficult. Add to it that we're operating 7 venues around the province, right? You can't turn off insurance. You can't, I see Scott Wagler here from Jocelyn. You cannot turn off insurance. You can't turn off your systems, right? There's maintenance you still have to do for your facilities. Many times I had somebody say, well, this is going to kill small theater companies. And I said, well, some of them operate in their basement. So they don't have the facilities, they rent facilities, right? So we have a critical problem right now at our Huron Country Playhouse venue in Grand Bend, where if the pandemic wasn't enough, we now have to replace our holding tanks and sewage system and our pumps and so on. And that quote just came in at close to $1 million. So for a company that doesn't rely on operating funds, it's yet just another challenge for us. Even though the Arts Councils didn't come forward for us, there have been some good things that have happened through government. Of course, wage subsidies. Honestly, if the wage subsidy hadn't happened, we probably would have had to shut down. Typically, we have about 50 people working full time for Drayton Entertainment. When all 7 theaters are operating at the peak of the summer, there's about 400 people on the payroll, right? Well, all those have lost their jobs, obviously, artists, designers, technicians, and so on. And then our full-time staff, we're down to maybe a core staff of 10 to 12 right now with reduced hours trying to mitigate losses. But obviously there is a little light at the end of the tunnel that we're starting to see. And we are kind of preparing for a gradual reopening. All along the way, we have been told by our stakeholders, our audiences, they cannot wait to come back, but they always finish it by saying when it's safe to do so, which is totally understandable.
Yeah. I just noticed the lights go off behind you. I hope that's not a signal of any sort.
Conserving energy.
Yeah. Well, and that's probably a really good thing. I want to go back though a little bit, trace back. I certainly want to talk about some of the things that you've done and the successes you've had throughout the pandemic to keep the lights on for the most part. But I want to go back to that very beginning, because I think, that's a story that you've told many, many times, but I think it doesn't settle into people on really where Drayton Entertainment is now with 7 venues around the province of Ontario, employing hundreds of people over the course of a season, and entertaining tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of people along the way. But that very first idea, those of you who are on the call, where Drayton is. You probably maybe even been to the theater. It's a farming community. It's in the very dead center of Mennonite country, farming community, and really, I obviously it was a success, Alex. But let me tell you something. I would think if you'd approached me way back then and said, Greg, I got this idea, and I'm going to go to Drayton, Ontario, in the middle of Mennonite farming community, and I'm going to open a live professional theater. Like, I'd say to you, like, Alex, like, really, like, wake up from this dream. And it might be the influence you received in the whole immigration thing, where your mom and dad bring their 3 little kids here, with 1 crate, looking for a better opportunity, and not looking at the difficulties going forward as impenetrable walls, but looking at them as opportunities. And I think That's kind of what you looked at. And how did you approach council of the day to say, hey, I'd kind of like to use this facility, and I think this would be really, really good. And I hope you can kind of rally around and give this young Alex Mustakas a shot at building something unique. How did that even go?
Well, it's very interesting. When I got back from England, where I studied, I was directing a show at the Humanities Theatre at the University of Waterloo. And the general manager of that venue at the time happened to live in Drayton. And he said, the community has come together to save this town hall, because there was a great debate in the 80s about bulldozing this town hall that included the Opera House on the second floor and building a new municipal office. And some concerned citizens came together and said, we need to save this facility. And back then, so this is in the 80s, where there was a little bit of government money for infrastructure. They raised, this again, a community of 1,000, they raised close to $200,000 to renovate this facility. Mind you, what they did was just bring it to fire code, right? And because previous to us being there was a community amateur theater group that would do 2 shows a year, and everyone's sisters, cousins, and aunts would be on stage, and the Reeve would be on stage, et cetera, right? Until the fire chief walked in one day and said, this place isn't safe for public occupancy. And that's where the debate started, right? But they raised the money and they saved this place. And then at that point, they said, wow, with all the momentum, it's a shame that we're only going to use it for 6 nights of the year. Can we create another Blythe Festival? Can we create another Stratford or Shaw or anything like this? And that's where I kind of came into the picture, being introduced by this gentleman that ran the Humanities Theatre. And I called my good friend Neil Aitchison, who everybody knows. And that was the validation. When Neil and I went to Drayton to meet with the secretary treasurer and the Reeve, right? We started a dialogue, and I said, well, why don't I put a little study together for you for the next 3 months, and then we can go from there. And I remember presenting it on September 1st, 1990, in front of a committee of council. And there were 20 people in the room. And I explained the benefits of professional theater in a community. I also explained how difficult it is and what a tough industry it is, that you have to rely on sometimes funding, sometimes corporate sponsorships and individual donations, et cetera, because the true cost of producing theater is not reflected in that average ticket price, right? Our average price is really subsidized by all the fundraising we do and all the corporate sponsorship, et cetera, right? So I explained it all, and there was a gentleman in the back row who I find out later, he is a prominent farmer in the community. Turns out his grandfather actually built the town hall, right? And I was done after about an hour, and it opened up for discussion. And this gentleman, his name was Bruce Sheik, stood up and he said, our kids have grown up to hockey and to baseball and to television. Why not expose them to arts and culture? And those sentiments then were echoed by every single person in that room. And then on top of that, at the end of it, they all took out their checkbooks and then said, how can we help? Right? And I knew it was the right time with the right people in history that this thing might be able to work. And by July 1st of 1991, we had our first professional performance. Leading up to that point, it wasn't until about 2 or 3 days before that we all said, wow, is anybody going to show up? Like we kept our heads down and did our work. Everybody helped, everybody. And even in the early days of the theater, we had members of council as house managers. We had the postmistress next door who was a dresser backstage. We had the local server at her parents' only restaurant in town, right, help us backstage, pulling curtains and things like that. So everyone in that community came together. And that's what I mean about the grassroots of this theater. And in fact, a number of years ago, I was approached by the Fox family, Terry Fox's family, about creating a musical about Terry. which we eventually did and produced. And I think why they chose us was for the same kind of grassroots movement when they heard our history, because that was the same with Terry. It was a grassroots movement that has become one of the great stories, obviously. So to this day, I pay tribute to those individuals in that community, and that sentiment has spread throughout all our theaters as well. Everyone is helping, but it was a very special time. It's very interesting, you know. I can tell you exactly what happened for the first 3 or 4 years in this little village, every single detail. If you ask me what I had for dinner last night, I don't know, right? But it was a special time, and I will never forget it. But and a lot of those individuals are still with us. They're still advocates of what it can do for a community. And it exploded after that first performance. Who would have thought Drayton would have parking problems in this little village? Who would have thought the local restaurant was running out of dishes? They were running out of hot water, right? So it just the impact was immediate, as it is in most locations that we're in. But again, we've been able to do this, and a lot of the kind of fiscal responsibility model that we have came from those original people who said, uh, we don't play unless we pay. We're not going to get into debt, right? And we want ticket prices reasonable because we want it accessible to everyone. And that's driven us for all these years. 32 years later, we're still the value for money in our tickets. The interesting thing people don't realize, you see a show in Cambridge, like about 3 years ago, about 70% of the cast come from away in Toronto at Mirvish was in Cambridge performing for us. We have artists who will finish a show on a Saturday night and then they start rehearsing on Broadway the following week. I mean, that's the caliber of people we have. It's a big world, but it's a small industry, and actors go where the work is. And most of them that go to Broadway come back and say, I've really missed this, because this is what theater's about, because it's about community as well. So that's kind of, that's what set us up, was that little village and two crossroads. And the interesting thing is that Drayton now, a lot of people don't realize Drayton is actually a little village. It's become a brand name. I'll go to meetings in New York with licensing companies or producers and so on, and they'll say, "Are you Mr. Drayton?" I go, "No, it's a little village," and they know about Cambridge. I'll go to New York and they'll say, "Yes, there's a beautiful theater in Cambridge." All across Canada, they know about us. They know about the Cambridge market as well, and how it all works together. But it really was just about a model of sustainability and not being a burden on community. Of course, we've been fortunate. All our communities came together. Every one of our communities helped us with some of our operating costs, just to keep the lights on. But failing the Arts Council distribution, we raved and we ranted for a while, and then we let it go. And we said, let's go to our stakeholders. Let's go to the people that care about us. And we did this, and some of you probably have followed this online 50-50, right, that we've done. I just presented a check to someone from Walkerton 2 days ago. They came here and they received a check for $75,000. We have raised about $675,000 just through this 50-50. People played to win the jackpot. B, they loved having fun to see how the jackpot grew. But more importantly, they were helping a not-for-profit charitable arts organization because they want us to come back. They want us to survive. And I'll tell you, that $675,000 we've raised so far has been a lifeline. And I don't think we would have got a distribution from the Arts Council even close to that amount. Yeah. So it really worked out well, and that's what I mean about in times of struggle. It's the grassroots who come together to help. But also the arts, historically, are the first to help other causes as well, and we have to keep remembering that. But the impact that the theater alone has had just, in the province, we were scheduled in 2020 to do about 832 performances. And you have to remember back in 1991, I had 44 performances. So 832 performances over 7 venues. And we were poised to reach about 275,000 tickets sold for 2020. And we lost all that. And the economic impact, and this is based on Government of Ontario's tourism regional economic impact models, was going to be over $82 million province-wide. It's done everything that we wanted it to do. It's, first of all, arts and culture. So it helps culturally, it helps economically, it helps educationally, and of course, socially as well, because people are very proud of this facility that they can call their own. So
yeah, I want to get to that. We're going to talk about the youth program that Drayton has you've really pushed incredibly hard to get something successful in that because of the demand. But I just want to say in the very beginning, from a Cambridge perspective with the Hamilton Family Theater, I remember the early days and you and I having, coffee in St. Jacobs and talking about, what we can do and how it can happen in Cambridge and where it can happen in Cambridge. And I understand that at that time, there was a lot of risk from Drayton Entertainment's perspective of saying, yeah, we can fill it up. I think there was, maybe a lot of speculation in Cambridge because Cambridge has largely been the hockey town, the baseball town. It's kind of emphasized its culture around sports as opposed to arts. And but we knew that there was an evolution of change in the people in the community, the young people in the community who are desperately in need of that. But, I want to tell you that when you talked about being in New York and, and then comparing, a show in Toronto or somewhere else in the province with shows going on here and how some of these licensing companies certainly know Cambridge. I think you had this plan of kicking off the theater in Cambridge with a bang. And you went and begged, borrowed, and stole, basically, to get the inaugural performance at the theater in Cambridge being Mary Poppins. And the Disney people, when they came up to look at it, because they have to do that, because Disney is Disney, and they don't like anything they own being manipulated with or fudged with to some degree. They were extremely impressed as well. Why don't you tell us that story?
Yeah. We were actually, this Cambridge Theatre was the first in the world outside of Broadway and production in Australia of the new musical Mary Poppins by Disney. And I made the case. I said, listen, this is a brand new theater. Your productions have been, like the Broadway production, I think was between 15 and $20 million, right? And eventually you're going to release the rights across North America or across the world. Let us be your first kind of regional theater to attempt to produce this magic in our own way. And I remember them coming here to see the show. And that right after the show, I kind of walked out and I looked at them and they gave me a 2 thumbs up, right? And then we went for dinner and they had come from New York, where Disney Theatrical has its head office. And I said to them, your budget was $15 million and high tech, a lot of computer work and things flying in and out. And I said, I have 2 guys who push the set, and they said, well, you made it work. And we wish we could have saved that money, right? But it's a tough business, even in New York. I would say over 80% of productions in New York never recoup their capitalization. They never recoup their original investment. But then if you hit on one, like a Jersey Boys or a Mary Poppins, or an Aladdin or something that runs for years and years, then you've done something. So again, it's a tough industry, but we were so excited to get that show, and honestly, we recreated exactly what they did on Broadway at the end, where Mary Poppins flew over the audience right up into the balcony. And for anyone that had never experienced theater before, that was a magical moment. In retrospect, the only thing I would have done different is I would have put some advertising on the bottom of her shoes. Fly Air Canada,
Yeah.
Flair Airlines.
Yeah. That was so memorable from I know a lot of people's perspective in Cambridge who had the opportunity to go and see that production, and then really realize the value of live professional theater in your own community, just down the street from home is absolutely amazing, and it really ignited the excitement. And that I can remember that following year, as it's your duty to really demonstrate the value of the capital investments of the province, the federal government, and the municipality. I was actually completely shocked with the study that was done to realize the economic benefits of the first year of Drayton Entertainment operating a live professional theater in Cambridge. It was somewhere around $24 or $25 million of economic benefit, which just completely shocked me. I knew that there was some, but to see that in the first year of operation. Now I know the first year sometimes is the cream of the crop, but we've seen your theater in Cambridge be extremely successful. But it also bolstered the rest of the province. And now we have a pandemic that takes away that economic, because that 24, 25 million bucks, yes, it included some of the ticket sale revenue that would be recycled into the community, but largely it was hotel stays, it was restaurants, it was gas, it was all of those other things that happen when a visitor comes to our community. All of that has been taken away throughout the pandemic. That's hundreds of millions of dollars over the course of 18 months that small little businesses in every single community right across the province where there is live professional theater, it's hurt them. So not just the closure, but taking away all of that economic activity from one really singular sector, and that's theater in their communities. It's been a devastating hit, not just to you and Drayton Entertainment, but to communities that you serve as well.
Of course, and we are obviously part of the tourism industry as well, right? Not just arts and culture, but we are part of tourism. And the actual tourism sector is worth about $35 billion, the provincial. So imagine the devastation, right? And the employment as well lost with this too. But aside from the economic downturn, what value do you put on, which is really hard to put a monetary value to. What value do you put to artistic work, right? And the feeling one gets leaving a show or being entertained, the social aspect. We've tried very hard to engage young people as well and introduce them to live theater, and that has all been lost too, right? And one thing that a lot of people don't understand, we are touched by every element of arts and culture and everything that we do, because we develop creative minds, right? And these are kind of critical thinkers, and everything we do is touched by an artist, right? Like Ferrari builds an incredible engine, but it's an artist who has to kind of develop the package to sell it, right? Everything we touch is created by a creative mind. It's a shame we're losing that in schools. They're cutting arts programs. I know that I'd heard recently Kingston, where most of the people go to get their education to become a teacher, right? They cut the arts package as part of that as well, and I don't understand it. I really don't, because we need both sides of the brain. And when you talk about the impact of theater, I never want to take anything away from education. I never want to take anything away from healthcare. I believe we are education, we are healthcare, and that we are just part of a balanced community, right? We need to attract workers, we need to attract creative minds to our area, and that's one of the first things they ask. What else is there to offer? What does this community offer? And it's sports, but it also has a vibrant cultural scene as well. And it's just about a balanced community, and I think that's why it's important.
Speaking of education, I know you and I have talked a lot about this, but your youth project has been a passion of yours for a long, long time. It's been hugely successful when you've run it in various locations, but now it's going to have a permanent home, and I think that is incredibly exciting. We're gonna have an opportunity to really develop our own product here, and our kids that are interested in performing arts are going to have an opportunity right here at home to express themselves, to learn, and to move their dream forward. Talk a little bit about the project.
Yeah. Well, we've had a very successful program over the last 5 years where we have kind of weekend camps, we have week-long camps, summer camps, and so on. And the really good thing about us and our brand is that then we're actually able to incorporate kids into our productions when possible. The testimonials we receive from parents, from teachers, saying, "I don't know what happened to this child, but they have found their way," because we create safe spaces for them to come in and be creative and learn how to communicate and so on. So it's always been a dream of ours to actually have a hub for this activity that then we can replicate in all our other areas around the province. So the Hefner family has been very generous to provide 10,000 square feet in a building on Northfield and Parkside in Waterloo, and we are under renovation right now. We have received a bit of funding. We have received some corporate help and some very generous individual contributions as well for this project, and it will be a hub. Selfishly for us, we certainly know that maybe 10% will become future performers, right? But that's not all that this is about. We believe we're creating better citizens. We believe that we're creating creative minds. We know that they're gonna go on and be business leaders that will support arts and culture. They're gonna be politicians that support arts and culture. They're gonna be teachers that support arts and culture. But we have found that these kids want to be creative, and it's not all about kind of math and science. Again, it's to balance our own selves in a balanced community, right? One of our biggest contributors to this project is a gentleman called Brad Carr, who is now the president of Mattamy Homes, the biggest home builder in North America. Many of you know Mattamy Homes. And he is pledging, we're about to announce it, a major contribution to this. And one of the reasons he supports it is he said, "I am where I am today because I participated in high school theater at Elmira Secondary," right? And he believes in it, and he believes what it can do for young people and how it will develop them as great citizens moving forward. So we're very excited about it. We're also going to focus on the marginalized community. as well to provide a space. And we've close to raising $250,000 to provide as bursaries for the marginalized community as well. We don't want anyone left out. If they can't afford it, we will make sure that they're taken care of. So it's a very exciting project, and it's just going to make better people in our community. That's what we believe.
It's absolutely a fantastic organization. It's great. Catherine McGarry, our mayor, writes in the comments that it's probably the predominant amenity in the community that economic developers show or highlight when prospective businesses are looking to relocate here. And then you can talk about the entire Drayton entertainment family, where their employees who might live in Drayton, but work in their plant will have the opportunity to have a rounded experience of life living in our communities. It's so important. I recall when Toyota, I was on a working committee. It was then Mayor Miller, who asked me to sit on a working committee with some economic development people and some business people as well. And I can remember sitting down talking with some Toyota people who were, making the decision. And they were, at that point, they had 5 sites in the province that they were looking at. Cambridge was just one of them. They would come and they would hear from those of us who live, eat, sleep, and breathe in the community and work what the value of this community was. I can tell you, you could talk about work and the businesses that locate here and all of that, and they almost turn their hearing aids off. What they wanted to know about was what were their workers' families going to do when they were at work, and how was the community building around them to support families and people's interests. And they were at the very last meeting. I can remember they had it in Montreal, where they were deciding on 2 locations. Cambridge was one of them. They invited the mayor and the commissioner of community services, not the planning, not the engineering. They didn't care about any of those details. They didn't want the tax department. They didn't want the CAO. They wanted the mayor, and they wanted the head of recreation and community to be there so that they could talk about what their plans are and what they see as a future for the community. And at the end of the day, you got to look at Toyota, 8,000 employees now. Have they ever made a mistake at building a plant anywhere in the world? I don't think so. But they've done it very strategically, and it's all centered around people. And I think that's the element. While I always loved live professional theater, even though I was a hockey and baseball guy, but I just love the experience of it. But I knew a lot of people that, they'd rather go to the movie theater and eat popcorn and watch a flick on a screen. And I said, no, you just don't understand. My mother introduced it to me years and years ago when I was like 11 or 12 years old, and I just fell in love with it. And I think everybody has, and everybody does once they experience it once, that this is something that it's not like watching a movie at a movie theater. It's not that experience. It is a community experience, a warm experience. You're actually seeing real people do these things in 3 dimensions right in front of you. And I see it in the chat box. Everybody is saying, when are you opening? We want to get back at it. Please, let's have some live theater at the Hamilton Family Theater and all of the theaters at Drayton Entertainment. You bring immense value. The organization brings immense value to the people who live here. And I certainly want to thank you for that too.
Thank you, Greg. You're absolutely right. There is nothing like that communal experience that live theater can provide, where we emote as one, we laugh as one, we cry as one, we think as one. we continue the social discourse after we see a production as well. The kids that are involved talk about it for months and how it has affected them. There is light at the end of the tunnel. We are hoping that we will have a production here in December, the month of December. We just did a survey with our database, and we have about 100,000 people in our database. Within 3 days, we received 8,000 responses. First of all, that tells you people care. And it's very interesting. 65% said we are ready to come back indoors. Of those 65, about 83% said as long as there's double vaccinations, we wear a mask, and there is physical distancing, right? The interesting thing was then I asked the question, what happens if the government says 100% capacity? And then it reduced quite a bit to, I think, about 35%. So that's something we have to think about. Aside from all the other protocols and what we do with lobbies and washrooms and pre-orders and keeping people safe in the auditorium and backstage as well. So I think we will be doing something. What's interesting right now is, and I have been reticent a little bit because even with what they've announced as 50% capacity, I wasn't sure whether that still included physical distancing, but it turns out 50% means 50%. So we're going to do our best in this theater here in Cambridge that seats 500, that we will have a capacity of probably less than 250, and we will do the best we can to maintain physical distancing as part of that as well. I have to tell you, I was nervous about it until this past weekend. I was invited to attend a Jays game, and I went there just to experience it. And I'll tell you, the place was packed. We all had to show our double vaccination certificate, and our ID, but it was packed. We were shoulder to shoulder. So people are, they do want that experience being with other people, and the fact that they know others are double vaccinated, I think, is going to help as well. So I think you can probably count on something happening in December to kind of get our feet wet. And it is going to be a slow recovery, I can tell you that, because I think it's all about, I think once people come in and they feel comfortable and they feel safe, that word is going to spread. And that's what it's going to be about. So fingers crossed, we will be back on stage this December.
Awesome. And the Youth Academy, when is it destined to open?
We are hoping that in the new year we will be up and running and are setting the curriculum now. But we're very excited about it, and I think we're going to raise the money for it because people are being very generous when it comes to youth and marginalized communities and so on. And I think it's going to be something outstanding that we're going to replicate at all our venues as well. That's just going to be kind of the creative hub. But you will see week-long weekend camps here at the Hamilton as well.
Ladies and gentlemen, I know you'll join me, those of you who have been there, to one of the Drayton Entertainment performances, and I don't care which theater you've been to, you will come away saying the value was unbelievable, the experience was terrific, and the show was absolutely sensational. I've not seen a bad show. I don't think you can see one when it's live performance. You can see a bad movie, but you can't see a bad show when it's a live performance. There's something just really special about that. And for those of you who haven't, log on and get signed up and be on the mailing list for Drayton Entertainment, because you don't want to miss the opportunity to see what you can see right here in Cambridge. And by the way, you'll never have to pay for parking like you do in Toronto, and you'll get a reasonably priced ticket, unlike you do in Toronto. And the experience is probably better. Nice, quaint, cozy theaters where you're part of the action. Alex Mustakas, you are, I'm a huge fan of yours, as you know. I'm a huge fan of Drayton Entertainment. I think that they bring immense value to our communities. Thank you for dreaming that dream and living it out and giving us who live here in Southwestern Ontario something that we can all be proud of. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Greg. Thanks, everybody. And I see a lot of supporters on this call, and I just appreciate every one of you. And I can't wait to have you back in the theater and enjoy a musical or a play together again. So thank you.
Awesome. Thanks very much, folks. Have a great day. Go out and earn some money now. That's what we want you to do. Keep the economy going. Get some traction there. Let's go and do it. Have a great day and a great rest of the week. Oh, and by the way, happy Thanksgiving.